This adventurous story begins with a ruthless king named Solomon Kane. Solomon, leading his fierce army, had attacked a vast empire. He mercilessly killed any soldier who came in his way. His goal was to conquer the entire empire, and he would achieve it by killing the reigning king. He was so ruthless that he spared no one, not even the wounded, executing them without hesitation. Solomon possessed exceptional swordsmanship and fighting techniques, making him invincible in battle. As he slaughtered enemy soldiers, he reached a chamber filled with numerous mirrors. As soon as his soldiers entered, strange spirits emerged from the mirrors, grabbing and pulling them inside, killing them instantly. However, Solomon remained unfazed because his primary objective was to kill the king and claim the throne. He proceeded directly to the king's chamber but found no sign of the ruler. Upon looking around, he discovered that the king was already dead, his lifeless body lying in a corner. Suddenly, a dark shadow appeared and took a seat on the throne. This menacing shadow was none other than the devil himself. The devil spoke, declaring that he had come to absorb Solomon's soul and drag him to hell for his countless sins and merciless killings. Solomon's soul was doomed to hell upon his death. But Solomon refused to accept this fate. As the devil approached to claim him, Solomon quickly dodged and shattered one of the mirrors, escaping from the kingdom. The devil, unable to capture him, was left behind. Years passed, and far away in a village, a large church stood. Inside lived none other than Solomon Kane. He had abandoned his evil ways, realizing that if he continued his wicked deeds, God would condemn his soul to hell. To atone for his sins, he dedicated himself to good deeds, donating all his wealth to the church. Solomon believed he would spend the rest of his life doing good, but everything changed when he met a priest. The priest told him, "I have had a vision about you." And in that vision, it was clear that Solomon was not meant for a life of peace in the church. His destiny was something much greater. The priest believed that Solomon should not remain there and instead return home. Since Solomon deeply respected the priest, he followed his advice. Gathering some food and supplies, he set out on his journey back to his homeland, the place where he was born and where his family once lived. However, along the way, a group of thieves ambushed him. They attacked him and stole his belongings. Solomon, despite his incredible fighting skills, did not retaliate. He had changed, he was now a good man. Instead of fighting back, he endured their beatings and let them take everything. The thieves left him unconscious on the ground. After some time, Solomon regained consciousness and found himself being tended to by a beautiful woman named Meredith. She and her family had been traveling when they discovered the wounded Solomon and decided to help him. As night fell, her family decided to set up camp and took great care of Solomon, ensuring he was comfortable and safe. That night, as Solomon rested, he had a vision, a memory from his past. He saw himself as a child, witnessing an incident involving his older brother. His brother had been harassing a girl, and young Solomon had stepped in to stop him. However, this angered his brother, who then attacked Solomon. They fought fiercely, and during the struggle, his brother lost his footing near a cliff. Before Solomon could do anything, his brother slipped and fell to his death. The painful memory jolted Solomon awake. Disturbed, he sat beside Meredith's father, still processing the vision. As they sat together, the group engaged in deep conversation, sharing stories and thoughts late into the night. Solomon opened up to Meredith's father, confessing everything about his dark past, how he had once been a ruthless man, taking countless lives for his own gain. But he also told him that he had realized his mistakes and had since dedicated himself to doing good deeds. He believed that if he continued on this righteous path, God would not send him to hell. Meredith's father understood Solomon's sincerity and reassured him, saying, "Your intentions are pure. If you continue to walk this path, God will recognize your change of heart and welcome you into heaven." Over time, Solomon grew close to Meredith and her family. He admired their simple and kind nature and decided to continue traveling with them. However, his attention often drifted toward Meredith. He was beginning to develop feelings for her. As they journeyed forward, they arrived at a village, only to find it completely destroyed. The sight was horrifying. All the villagers had been brutally massacred. The only survivor was a young girl. Solomon and Meredith's family took the girl in, offering her food and water before gently asking what had happened. The girl explained that the villagers had tried to burn a witch to protect themselves, but in a furious act of revenge, the witch cursed the entire village, killing everyone. Hearing this, Meredith comforted the girl and urged her to pray to God, believing that faith could set things right. However, the girl refused to recite the holy verses. This made Solomon suspicious. He took out a symbol of God and held it towards the girl. The moment he did, her true identity was revealed. She was not a girl at all, but the witch in disguise. Before anyone could react, the witch cast a dark curse upon Meredith, marking her hand with an ominous symbol that began spreading slowly. The witch then revealed her true form. Solomon immediately engaged in battle with her, determined to stop her from harming anyone else. However, after a brief but intense fight, the witch vanished into the darkness, escaping before he could finish her. Panting, Solomon turned toward Meredith, his eyes widening as he saw the cursed mark on her hand. It was growing. The dark mark on Meredith's hand continued to spread, but even Solomon didn't fully understand what it meant. However, there was no time to stop, they had to keep moving forward. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a masked man was making his move. He was a terrifying figure, wielding dark powers. He had captured the same thieves who had stolen Solomon's belongings, but instead of killing them, he used his black magic to take control of their minds. One by one, he transformed them into his loyal soldiers, making them exact replicas of himself. It was clear, this masked man possessed immense dark power. As he and his new army marched forward, Solomon spotted them from a distance. He could tell these people were merciless, leaving no survivors in their wake. Moments later, Meredith's brother rushed to Solomon, warning him of the danger ahead. Solomon quickly told him, "Take your family and escape. These men will kill anyone in their way." But it was too late. The masked man's soldiers had already reached Meredith's family. Her brother screamed, alerting Solomon, who ran toward them at full speed. By the time he arrived, several of the masked man's soldiers had already captured Meredith's brother. Solomon pleaded with them, "He's just a child. Let him go. If you need a hostage, take me instead." But the soldier holding Meredith's brother was completely under the masked man's control. Without hesitation, the masked man gave the order, "Kill him." And just like that, before Solomon could do anything, the soldier executed Meredith's brother. The sight was unbearable. Rage boiled inside Solomon. He had believed in redemption, in goodness, in doing what was right, but what had it brought him? Nothing but suffering. At that moment, Solomon felt something snap inside him. He prayed to God, but not for mercy. Instead, he asked for strength to kill. Even if it meant his soul would be sent to hell, he would not let these monsters walk free. With unrelenting fury, Solomon launched himself into battle, cutting through the masked man's forces like a storm. None of them could stand against him. He was no longer just fighting, he was executing. But then, through the chaos, Solomon saw something that made his blood run cold. The masked man was escaping, with Meredith. She had been kidnapped. Solomon couldn't allow this to happen. Fueled by rage and determination, he cut down every enemy in his path, desperately trying to reach Meredith. But despite his efforts, he was too late. The masked man's followers had already taken her away. Defeated and breathless, Solomon rushed to Meredith's father, who was barely holding on to life. Bloodied and weak, the old man looked into Solomon's eyes and, with his last breath, whispered, "Save my daughter, this is my only wish." And with that, Meredith's father died. Solomon clenched his fists, his body shaking with fury. He had already lost too many innocent lives. He swore to himself, no matter what it took, he would bring Meredith back. Without hesitation, Solomon armed himself with every weapon he could find. His path was clear, kill anyone who stood in his way. Village after village, he slaughtered the masked man's soldiers, cutting through them like a storm of vengeance. But despite his relentless pursuit, there was no sign of Meredith. He searched everywhere, asking villagers, following trails, but every lead went cold. Time was slipping away, and so was Meredith. Then, one day, Solomon arrived at an old church. Inside, he found a priest. Hoping for answers, he approached the man and asked, "Tell me where the masked man is. He has kidnapped Meredith." The moment the priest heard the masked man's name, his face turned pale with fear. He hesitated, but then, realizing there was no escape, he led Solomon to a hidden bunker beneath the church. What Solomon saw there sent shivers down his spine. The bunker was filled with creatures, people who had once been normal but were now twisted, mindless husks. Their eyes were empty, their bodies rotting, their movements slow and unnatural. They were zombies. The priest, trembling, explained, "These people, they were once like us. But the masked man, he infected them, turned them into this. He ordered me to care for them, to keep them alive. He's building an army, an unstoppable force. And if I don't obey, he'll kill me too." Solomon watched in horror as the undead creatures groaned and shuffled aimlessly. His blood boiled. The masked man wasn't just a murderer, he was a monster. And if Solomon didn't stop him soon, Meredith's fate would be worse than death. They found Solomon sitting alone, drowning himself in alcohol. The fire that once burned in his eyes was gone, replaced with a hollow emptiness. The weight of Meredith's supposed death had crushed his spirit. The men who found him were his former soldiers, warriors who once fought under his command. They had seen him at his strongest, his most ruthless. But now, all they saw was a broken man. One of them, a burly soldier named Garrick, sat beside him and said, "This isn't the Solomon we followed into battle. This isn't the warrior who struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. What happened to you?" Solomon scoffed, taking another sip from his drink. "She's gone. Meredith is dead. And I failed her. I failed all of them." Another soldier, a young but sharp-eyed fighter named Oren, stepped forward. "You think drowning yourself in ale will bring her back?" he snapped. "You think this is what she would have wanted?" Solomon clenched his fists. He knew they were right. But the pain was unbearable. Garrick leaned in. "We've been hunting the masked man too. And we've heard things, rumors. They say he doesn't kill his sacrifices. He corrupts them, bends them to his will. You saw what he did to those thieves. You really think he'd just kill Meredith and waste her?" Solomon's heart skipped a beat. A spark of hope flickered in his chest, but he was afraid to believe it. "What are you saying?" Oren smirked. "We're saying that Meredith might still be alive." The air grew heavy with silence. And then, something changed. The fire in Solomon's eyes reignited. He slammed his drink down and stood up. His body was still weak from days of self-destruction, but his will was stronger than ever. "If she's alive," Solomon said, his voice filled with newfound determination, "then I'm getting her back. No matter what it takes." His old soldiers grinned. That was the Solomon they knew. The warrior. The leader. The man who didn't stop until he won. And so, with a new purpose, Solomon picked up his sword, gathered his allies, and set forth on a mission more dangerous than any before, one that would take him straight into the heart of darkness. And they knew how powerful Solomon was. All of them started telling Solomon that they should rebuild their army, and Solomon would just guide them so that they could completely destroy Masked Man and his followers. But Solomon didn't want this. After Meredith's supposed death, he didn't feel good about anything. He told the man to leave. The scariest thing happened next. Masked Man's forces attacked the village where Solomon was staying. They captured the normal people and executed those who resisted. Many were crucified by Masked Man's men. Solomon was among the victims, and he had no will to live. The enemies nailed his hands and hung him up brutally. Solomon could have freed himself, but he didn't. He believed Meredith was dead. But then, Masked Man's men started taking prisoners away. Among them was Meredith. That meant she was still alive. As soon as Meredith saw Solomon hanging, she screamed his name. When Solomon heard her voice, he looked up and realized the truth. Meredith wasn't dead. She was alive. This realization brought him back to his senses. With a sudden burst of strength, Solomon freed his hands and dropped to the ground. Masked Man soldiers immediately rushed to kill him, but Solomon was still weak. The best thing happened at that moment. Those same people who had earlier tried to motivate Solomon to fight against Masked Man arrived. They joined the battle and launched a fierce attack on Masked Man's forces. They managed to save their leader, Solomon, and moved him to a safe place. Solomon remained unconscious for several hours. When he finally woke up, all his wounds had healed. His healing ability was extraordinary. Now, Solomon and his allies knew exactly where Masked Man was hiding with his followers. Actually, the Masked Man was inside a massive fortress on top of a mountain. Later, a shocking truth was revealed. The Grand Castle belonged to Solomon's father. Solomon had spent his entire childhood inside that castle, but now, he had no idea if his father was still alive or had been killed. However, Solomon was now ready for battle. He had to save Meredith at any cost. Solomon gathered all his allies and devised a plan to infiltrate the castle and fight Masked Man soldiers. Everyone knew how brave a warrior Solomon was, so they followed his lead and set out for battle. Under Solomon's guidance, his companions marched toward the castle and stood before its massive gates. For now, Masked Man soldiers hadn't arrived, but high above, the same witch who had cursed Meredith was present. She was chanting powerful spells. This enraged Solomon, and he threw his sword at her, killing her instantly. The very next moment, Masked Man's forces arrived, and a fierce battle erupted. Chaos spread everywhere as Masked Man soldiers attacked with relentless fury. Solomon fought alongside his allies, and it seemed like they might actually win against Masked Man. But then, Masked Man himself made his entrance. He was so powerful that whoever stood in his way was instantly eliminated. Like Solomon, he also possessed exceptional combat techniques. Solomon's allies soon realized that Masked Man was slaughtering them, and at this rate, they would never win. Understanding the situation, Solomon made a strategic decision. He ordered his companions to retreat inside the castle and hide. To buy them time, Solomon faced Masked Man alone. A fierce duel began between Solomon and Masked Man. However, Masked Man had the upper hand. He launched multiple powerful strikes, pushing Solomon to his limit. Solomon was struck by an attack he never expected. Wounded and exhausted, he had no choice but to retreat into the castle. Masked man soldiers were patrolling everywhere, searching for any intruders, while Masked Man himself hunted them down to kill them. As Solomon moved forward, he spotted an old man locked in chains. The moment Solomon saw his face, he realized it was his father. His father, who had once ruled this castle, was now frail and imprisoned for years. Solomon desperately tried to free him, but he failed. The chains were bound by dark magic, making them impossible to break so easily. Feeling remorseful, Solomon apologized to his father. He confessed that, as a child, he had accidentally caused the death of his elder brother, and that guilt had driven him away from home. But then, a shocking truth was revealed by his father. His elder brother had never actually died. Even though he had fallen from the high cliffs, he had survived. The king, Solomon's father, had sought treatment for him everywhere, but nothing worked. In the end, out of desperation, he turned to black magic. However, he never expected the dark forces to be so dangerous. The entity known as the Devil gave the king strict conditions, and in his desperation, the king agreed to all of them. His elder son was healed, but the dark forces completely consumed him. The black magic even disfigured his face, forcing him to wear a mask forever. Solomon immediately realized the horrifying truth: Masked Man was none other than his own elder brother. His brother, now so corrupted by darkness, wanted to kill his own flesh and blood. Despite this revelation, Solomon still tried to free his father. But his father refused. Instead, he handed Solomon a gun and begged him to end his life, because only in death could he find true freedom. He insisted, knowing that it was he who had brought these dark forces into the world. Solomon's father revealed that as long as he remained alive, the dark forces would continue to grow stronger. Solomon didn't want to do it, but he had no choice. With a heavy heart, he pulled the trigger, granting his father the freedom he desired. After this heartbreaking moment, Solomon became more serious than ever. He marched straight towards Masked Man, his elder brother, to uncover the truth. As soon as he entered the grand throne room, he saw a strange man sitting on the throne. That unknown figure was none other than the Dark Devil himself, the entity that had initially attacked Solomon. But now, after Solomon's father's death, the devil had lost a significant portion of his powers and had reverted to a more human form. Solomon immediately challenged the devil to a fight, blaming him for the twisted fate of his elder brother. But instead of fighting, the devil vanished into thin air. At that moment, Solomon noticed a cage in the room. Inside it was Meredith. Determined to save her, he rushed forward, but before he could reach her, Masked Man ambushed him from behind. Surrounded by dark energy, Masked Man attacked relentlessly. Solomon desperately tried to remind him of their bond, pleading, "I am your younger brother. We don't have to fight." But Masked Man refused to listen and kept attacking. Though Solomon fought back, he knew that the real battle wouldn't end until the devil was destroyed. So he shouted into the darkness, challenging the devil directly. "Where are you? Fight me. Or will you continue to hide like a coward?" Amused by Solomon's defiance, the devil finally revealed himself, laughing, confident, and holding a massive weapon. Then, he did something unexpected. He presented a giant mirror. Inside the mirror, a monstrous demon was trapped, a terrifying, colossal creature, so powerful that even Masked Man wouldn't be able to defeat it. The devil planned to release this beast by opening a portal. But to do so, he needed pure blood. Solomon immediately realized that the devil was about to attack, and once again, he tried to make Masked Man understand the danger. But Masked Man was blinded by rage. Ignoring Solomon's warnings, he kept attacking. Their battle intensified, and in a desperate move, Solomon struck his brother, setting his body ablaze and pushing him away from the battlefield. Meanwhile, on the other side of the room, the devil had grabbed Meredith. And with that, the devil spilled Meredith's blood onto the portal, triggering its full activation. Since Meredith had pure blood, the portal opened completely, and from within it, a monstrous demon emerged. This beast was colossal, so massive and terrifying that it began to destroy the entire castle. Under the devil's command, the demon advanced toward Solomon, ready to annihilate him. Solomon knew he might not survive this battle, but he had made a promise to Meredith's father, a promise he intended to keep, even if it cost him his life. Meanwhile, the devil held a knife to Meredith's throat, presenting Solomon with a sinister offer. "Give me your soul, and I will let her go. Your sacrifice will make us even stronger." Without hesitation, Solomon responded, "Let Meredith go, and I will surrender my soul to you." At that moment, the giant demon was also closing in on Solomon, reaching out to seize him. But what the devil didn't realize was that Solomon was a man of his word. Once he made a promise, he never broke it. As the devil sneered, confident in his victory, Solomon drew his father's gun. Without wasting a second, he fired a single shot, straight into the devil's head. The devil collapsed, his body tumbling backward into the portal. With his death, the portal shattered, severing the connection to the demonic world. As a result, the giant monster, being linked to the devil, suddenly weakened and was dragged back into the collapsing portal. In an instant, both the devil and his monstrous ally were completely erased from existence. Solomon, however, was on the brink of death. His soul was slipping away. But in that moment, the gods intervened. They forgave Solomon for his past sins, granting him a second chance at life. He had fulfilled his promise, saving Meredith and vanquishing the dark forces once and for all. With evil finally defeated, both Solomon and Meredith were overwhelmed with relief and happiness. Meredith felt deeply touched, realizing just how much Solomon truly loved her. But in the end, Solomon chose to walk his path alone. He paid his respects to all those lost in battle and set off on his journey once more. Through this entire ordeal, Solomon had finally found his life's true purpose: to fight against darkness, to protect the innocent, to bring hope to the world. That was where he found his happiness. And so, this story comes to an end.